Hi everyone, I'm Jordan, and you know what I like?
I like horror games.
But I don't just like horror games. I like other things too. But I certainly seem to talk about horror games. Like a lot.
Yes, I can't lie. My channel certainly does seem to be horror-themed, doesn't it? Extremely horror-themed. I mean, ever since my big reboot in 2014, it seems all I've really done is make videos about, well, horror. Like, what all have I done? I've done Resident Evil, I've done Slenderman, Eve, Spooky's House of Jump Scares, the top 10 horror games of 2014. Just horror. Horror, 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 horror. Oh, and that's not all. There's more stuff I want to do too. Like recently I've been wanting to review not just horror games, but horror movies too. Yeah, I want to start reviewing horror movies. Like I want to review The Babadook, and It Follows, and all the good old gnarly horror films from the 1970s and 80s. So, why is it I'm so obsessed with this genre? What is it about horror that I like so much? And what does that word even fucking mean anymore? Is horror just a theme meant to horrify? To induce dread, shock, and terror? Well, in my opinion, no. Nowadays, horror is a wide, huge, extensive genre. It's a many-sided word, and it would be unfair to lump that word with just one simple definition. Is Silent Hill horror in the same way that Resident Evil is horror? No, of course not. And is Evil Dead horror in the same way as The Sixth Sense? Or The Shining? Or Eraserhead? Or the Alien movies? No. See, there are clearly a lot of different things going on in this genre. A lot of different feelings and ideas being conveyed by different people, in different styles. When I watch a horror movie like Evil Dead, I'm watching it for the monsters, for the action, the blood, and the twisted madness of the story. But when I watch a movie like The Sixth Sense, I'm watching it because I like ghost stories. I like the emotion, the mystery, and the tragic sadness of it all. I'm interested in ghost stories because I'm interested in death. I'm interested in darkness and the unknown. And that's a very different thing from, well, Evil Dead.
How often do you see them?
All the time.
So, what about horror games? That's what we're here to talk about, right? Horror games? Resident Evil? Five Nights at Freddy's?
Lately, I don't think it's any surprise that horror games have been making quite a comeback. Horror games are popular now. Really popular. Especially among the new generation. Ever since Amnesia: The Dark Descent came out in 2010, and people on YouTube got famous playing it, reacting to it, and screaming at it, the internet seemed to go crazy for horror games. And I'm talking about the young gamers. Young gamers are obsessed with horror games. Unfortunately though, they only seem to be obsessed with one type of horror game.
Shock horror. People love shock horror. Jump scares, gore, noises, people popping up and going boo. No. You shut the fuck up, Kirby.
Now, personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with shock horror. I don't think jump scares are inherently bad, and I've even said before that Five Nights at Freddy's, for example, is a decent game with a handful of pretty clever ideas. But you know what bothers me about horror games nowadays? And what bothers me about gamers who play horror games? What bothers me is that everyone seems to think horror games need to be scary. Every time a horror game comes out, people judge it by its fear factor. If it's scary, it's worth something. If it's not scary, it sucks, apparently. And all the horror games that seem to get the most money, the most buzz, and the most success are games cashing in on little more than cheap, mediocre popcorn shock. Personally, I've never thought horror games needed to be scary. Scariness isn't even my favorite thing about horror games. It's not the reason I play them. I mean, sure, it's the reason I play some of them. I like to be scared. I really do. The feeling of fear is a sensation I truly love. It's like a high that can't be matched by anything else. But the majority of horror games I enjoy for the style, for the atmosphere, the situation, the theming, the music, and just, I don't know, I just love to be drenched in horror. I love the worlds that horror games take place in. I love how the characters in horror are always fucked up. Horror stories always seem to follow flawed individuals. Have you ever noticed that? Like, the characters in horror stories are always depressing. They have sad backstories, or hidden motives, or dark secrets under their skin.
What did you say?
I said you're not my mother!
I am your mother!
Horror stories usually focus on the darkness of the world. Things that are mysterious, or hidden, or painful, or spooky, or tragic. This is what I love about horror. Take Silent Hill, for instance.
I'm James. Angela. Angela, okay. I don't know what you're planning, but there's always another way.
Really?
Personally, I've never really found the Silent Hill games that scary. I mean, sure, Silent Hill can be disturbing, it can be startling, and there are certainly moments where it gets to be flat out terrifying. But usually, in most of its moments, I find Silent Hill comforting rather than scary. I'm more fascinated by Silent Hill. Fascinated by the music, the settings, the storyline, and the bleak, haunting loneliness of the atmosphere.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'd rather a horror game be interesting than scary. Like, I'd rather it be creepy, or intelligent, or just dark and beautiful.
How many people like the hidden backstory of Five Nights at Freddy's more than the actual game? And how many people like The Binding of Isaac, not just for its addicting gameplay, but for its dark plot, its spooky little images, and its controversial morbid themes? See, there's just so much more to like about horror than simply, well, horror. There's a lot more to this genre than people seem to expect. I mean, take that game Sanitarium. That's another good example.
I do not know you, sir, but I thank you. What is your greatest wish?
I wish that I could see my sister again.
While Sanitarium does have some seriously disturbing content, and did admittedly scare me when I was a little kid, I can't necessarily call it a scary game. Sanitarium is a trippy game, with psychological weirdness and deep, surreal, dreamlike qualities. And it's also a horror game. It's demented and twisted. The imagery is completely fucked up, and the characters are all sick, freaky looking, or just dismal and deranged.
Aren't I pretty? I hope to be as pretty as Mother when I grow up. Don't you think I'm pretty?
Sure. Oh, yes!
It's a game that's at its core a dark and haunting experience, but not necessarily scary. A term I hear a lot of people use for this is grim fascination. When you like something out of grim fascination, you like it because it's dark. It appeals to you, in a dark way. But that doesn't always mean you're afraid of it. It's so different to be afraid of something than it is to be fascinated by it. And that's the kind of stuff I love. I love things that can fascinate me, that can allure me, consume me, and captivate my imagination. And that's why it's a shame that most horror games are, well, cheap.
Jesus!
Like I said, it bothers me. But you know what really bothers me? What really, really, really bothers me? More than cheap shock horror? More than the people who only like cheap shock horror? What bothers me most is the reputation of horror in general. You know what I mean, right? The way people look at horror. In the grand scheme of things, horror isn't taken very seriously. In fact, it's perhaps the most frowned upon, the most laughed at, disrespected, and casually shrugged off genre, period. People on the outside who don't care about horror, don't enjoy it, and don't know anything about it, they look at horror and they see nothing but blood and guts. They see a pathetic genre, appealing only to the most basic, dumb, primal hankerings imaginable. And because of this, the horror genre is pretty much treated like a joke. And yes, in a way, it is kind of a joke. The horror genre is full of garbage, full of terrible movies, terrible games, annoying cliches, predictable plot lines, and millions of hastily rushed, soulless cash grab sequels. But you know what? Horror doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be stupid, and it doesn't have to be just blood and guts. It can be so much more. And I know this because I've seen it be so much more. Horror movies and horror games may often be total rubbish, but guess what? Some of the most respected films of all time are horror films, and some of the most respected games of all time are horror games. This genre doesn't have to be so calculated and predictable. It doesn't have to be lame. Instead, it can be something awesome. It just takes a little bit of love and a little bit of actual fucking effort.
And that's it for today. You know, I like you. I like you a lot. I like to stare into the camera and make silly faces. For you. Right now, I think I could just reach out and touch you.